We're now starting Mesechah Yomא. Yomã is the fifth Mesechta in Seder Moed. After Shabbos and an Eruvin, Pesachim and Shkolim comes Moed. Yomã is the Aramaic word for literally the day. Some pronounce it Yomã, but we're going to use the word Yomã, the pronunciation Yomã. And Yomã, of course, refers to the day of Yom HaKippurim. And the Yom Kippur, which we are familiar with in Golus, is very, very different to the Yom Kippur in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Indeed, only the last of the 8 Perokim of Mesechus Yomã deals with aspects of fasting and teshuvah and various restrictions of melacha, etc. on Yom Kippur. The first 7 Perokim deal with what was the real focus of the day in the times of old, i.e., the avodah of the Kohen Gadol in the Beis Hamikdash. And the first 7 Perokim deal with all aspects of that and goes off in digressions, but it's a fascinating discussion about all aspects of the avodah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom HaKippurim. Now the Mishnah begins. Shivas Yomim Kodim Yom HaKippurim. 7 days prior to Yom Kippur, Mafrishin Kohen Gadol mibeisoi lelishkas palhedrin. They would separate the Kohen Gadol from his home, lelishkas palhedrin, to the lishka of the palhedrin. Now, why would they do that? Well, really there are 2 reasons. Number 1, there is a gzeres hakosov. There is a gzeres hakosov which the Bar Tanura brings. The pasuk says, with regard to Yom HaKippurim, v'chiper hakohen asher yimoshach oisoi, and that is referred to, it says, midchsiv b'shivas yimei hamiluim, he mustn't leave the entrance of the Pesach Oil Moed for 7 days, and it says afterwards, so just like before the Shivas Yemei HaMiluim, on 2 other occasions we have to separate the Kohen Gadol. And the Gemara Darshans, V'darsh Rabbeinu, La'asos, the word La'asos in the Pasuk is a reference to Maaseh Parah. When he goes and makes the Parah, he burns the Kohen Gadol, the whole episode of how he prepares the Parah Aduma, the specific ash, he needs separating then. And also then it says, L'chaper aleichem zeh Maaseh Yom HaKippurim. That is a reference to Yom Kippur where we separate the Kohen Gadol beforehand. That's one reason. The second reason is because we're worried that he's going to become Tomei. As the Bar Tanura says in his opening line, Shekol avodas Yom HaKippur men kasheres el habayit. All the avodah of Yom Kippur is only kosher with the Kohen Gadol, and therefore it's imperative that he stays tahor. Because if he were to be Tomei, not only would he not be allowed to serve and to actually do the avodah, but he wouldn't even be allowed in the Beis Hamikdash. So it's essential that he stays tahor. So therefore, we separate him from his home and we put him in this Lishkas Palhedrin. Now, what exactly is this Lishkas Palhedrin? Where does he go? Well, the Lishkas Palhedrin, the Gemara says, is a chamber, is some sort of office or room on the side of the Azara. The difficulty is that Tosfos mentions that the Gemara says in Yomã that Ein Yeshiva Ba'Azara El Beis Malchus Beis David, that you're not allowed, the Gemara says, Ein Yeshiva Ba'Azara L'Malchus Beis David Bilvad. It's the Gemara in Yomã Daf Chaf Yomad Aleph. So therefore, how's it going to help putting him into this Lishkas Palhedrin? He can't sit there, and he certainly can't sleep there. So Tosfos on Daf Ches Amud Beis in Yomã discusses this problem, and he comes up with various solutions. Either that the entrance to this room, this chamber, only has 1 door, and the 1 door doesn't actually go into the Azara, it goes the other way, and therefore it's not considered being part of the Azara. That's one answer that Tosfos gives. Alternatively, Tosfos answers that the actual room, the actual office, the chamber of the Palhedrin sits outside of the Azara, and it's just the door which opens into it, and therefore that doesn't violate the restriction to sit there, and he's allowed to sit and sleep there, because of course the actual chamber is outside, but he can eat the kochim and other things that he needs to eat because the door opens up into the Azara. Okay, that is dealt with by Tosfos. Now, what is this Lishkas Palhedrin? Is a funny name. Where does it come from? Well, the Gemara says that originally the name used to be called Lishkas Bulvatin, which literally means the office of the prince's chamber. But it was changed to Palhedrin because in the times of Bayis Sheni, after the times of Shimon HaTzadik, the office of the Kohen Gadol became corrupted. And the Bar Tanura tells us why it was called Palhedrin. It's in reference to this. Says the Bar Tanura, Lelishkas Palhedrin, Pekidei HaMelech Nikroim Palhedrin. The offices of the king are called Palhedrin. So literally it means the chamber, the room of the officers. Now what does that mean? Says the Bar Tanura, Umitoich HaKohanim HaGedolim Shahoy B'Bayis Sheni, since the Kohanim Gedolim in the times of Bayis Sheni, Ach Shimon HaTzadik, they would pay, it would go to the highest bidder to become Kohen Gadol. And since they were wicked people, they wouldn't actually finish their year. They wouldn't live out the year. And therefore they would need to find a new Kohen Gadol next Yom Kippur. Just like the office of the king, where the king changes his offices on a very regular basis, so they changed the name to Lishkas Palhedrin because it's a reference to the chamber of the officers, like the officers of the king, who would come and go very easily. The king would hire and fire very easily. So too, the Kohen Gadol would come every year. There'd be a new Kohen Gadol during this period in Bayis Sheni, where the Kohen Gadol, the office of the Kohen Gadol, became corrupted. An amazing idea that the first Mishnah, Lishkas Palhedrin, refers to that. Now, one other point, and that is this. It says, Shivas Yom Kodim HaKippurim, Mafrishin Kohen Gadol Mebeisai Lishkas Palhedrin. He's removed from his house to the Lishkas Palhedrin, which we explained means that he is removed away from his house to this chamber in the Beis HaMikdash. But Beisai has two meanings. Either it means his home, but additionally it could mean his wife. Because really we know that if he goes to the Lishkas Palhedrin, then obviously he moves from his house to there. So the fact that we're told that he leaves Beisa is redundant. So therefore, the Chazal interprets it to mean additionally, Beisa means Zu Ishtoi, that he has to separate from his wife 7 days before Yom Kippurim. It's a machlokes whether that's D'oraisa, some say it's D'Rabbanan, but either way he cannot live with his wife because there is a fear that in case he lives with her and she is in a dvarni that he doesn't realize, but she was nida, he becomes tomei for 7 days. So therefore, it's a reference to that as well. Okay. Continues the Mishnah. We prepare for him another Kohen as a deputy for him in his stead, in case he becomes apostle. So therefore we have a deputy. Now the Gemara says the opinion of Rabbi Chanina is that the person we find to be his deputy is actually the Skan Kohen Gadol. The trouble is that the Yerushalmi lists the various responsibilities of the Skan Kohen Gadol, of the deputy Kohen Gadol, and standing in as a second place for the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur is not one of the jobs. And in fact, the Rabbanon argued with Rabbi Chanina, and the Rambam omits Rabbi Chanina's opinions, which suggests that the halacha is that it's not actually the Skan Kohen Gadol who is going to be the Kohen Acher Tachtov, but in fact it's another Kohen who is going to stand in the place of the Kohen Gadol. And then it says Shemi Yerbo Psul in case he becomes disqualified. Now, there's a very, very interesting Tosfos Yontov. The Tosfos Yontov says, he asks an amazing kasha. Tosfos Yontov is found in the very first Mishnah of Demai, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph of Demai. The Tosfos Yontov quotes the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, in Perek Hey, Mishnah Zayin, Asora Nisim Nasu Lavaseinu Beis HaMikdash. There were 10 miracles that took place in the Beis HaMikdash. And one of those miracles is, V'lo ira keri leKohen Gadol b'Yom Kippurim, that the Kohen Gadol never saw a seminal emission on Yom Kippur. So if there was a miracle which is assured to us, if you like, the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos records it, then why was it necessary to separate another Kohen, or to designate another Kohen in the stead of the Kohen Gadol? Because we're told he's not going to see a keri. So the Tosfos Yontov gives two answers. The first answer is Ein Soimchin al Hanes. You don't have to rely on a miracle. That what the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos is recording is a miracle. There were 10 miracles that took place in the Beis HaMikdash. One of them was that he's not going to see a keri, but you can't be soimich on that. You can't carry. You can't rely on miracles. Ein Soimchin al Hanes. Therefore, we have to do Ahishtadlus. Ahishtadlus is to appoint another Kohen in case he does become Tomei. That's one answer of the Tosfos Yontov. The second answer of the Tosfos Yontov is that these 10 miracles only took place up until the time of Shimon HaTzadik. After the death of Shimon HaTzadik, whereas we mentioned earlier, the caliber of the Kohanim Gedolim unfortunately went down dramatically, and therefore these miracles, they were no longer worthy of these miracles, and therefore it would be possible that such an incident would happen. A third answer is given. The answer from Mishnah quotes the Lechem Shamayim, that it's possible that the Kohen Gadol could become apostle in another way. What the Mishnah in Perek Yovah says is that he wouldn't see Lo Yi'ira Keri le Kohen Gadol, but a Kohen Gadol could become Tomei, for example, by touching something which was Tomei. He would touch a sheretz, or even if some spittle of a person who was Tomei would touch the Kohen Gadol, he could become Tomei. So therefore, the Mishnah in Perek Yovah is referring specifically to Keri. But the precautions were there because maybe he would become Tomei in another way. Okay, those are three answers to this question. Just one point, that the Gemara in Daf Gimel in Yomא is medayek, that the Mishnah says, Umaskinin loy kohen acher tachtov. We designate, we prepare another Kohen. But it doesn't say mafrishin, we separate. And we derive from there that it's only the Kohen Gadol who is separated from his home to the Lishkas Palhedrin, but the deputy can stay at home. He doesn't have to actually join the Kohen Gadol, but he can stay. It just says maskinin. Okay. Before moving on, one final point that the Sfas Emes mentions in the beginning of the Mishnah, when it says the Kohen Gadol is mafrishin Kohen Gadol lelishkas palhedrin, it doesn't mean that he's locked away there, but it's got the same get there as a sukkah, i.e., that just like on sukkahs, we move from our homes to our sukkah, but we're allowed to leave our sukkahs for short periods of time. So too, the Kohen Gadol is moved from his home to the Lishkas Palhedrin, but he is allowed to leave for short periods of time. He's not locked in there. Continues the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Af isha acheres maskinin loi. Not only would they remove him from his house and put him in the Lishkas Palhedrin, but they would designate a second wife for him. Why? Shema Thomas Ishtoi. Because maybe the wife of the Kohen Gadol would die, and that would prevent him from doing the avodah on Yom Kippurim. Shenem, as it says, v'chiper ba'adoi uva'ad beisai. He should atone for himself and for his bias. As we mentioned earlier, beisai zu isha is a reference to his wife. Beisai zu isha, says the Mishnah. And any part of the avodah mentioned in the pasuk is ma'akev. So therefore, if he hasn't got a wife, he can't do the avodah. So therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, they would actually prepare a second wife for him. Now there's an interesting discussion in the Gemara, how could they actually do that? What was the function? Did he actually marry her or not? So the Gemara concludes that he would marry this second wife. The difficulty that raises is, well, a Kohen Gadol is only allowed to have one wife. So the Gemara goes through and prepares a whole strategy how he's going to do it. He gives both wives, his first wife and his new wife, a get al tanai, and the various formulation works out that he'll only be married to one wife at any one time through various conditions, etc. And therefore, that's how the Gemara deals with it. The Yerushalmi, however, concludes that he doesn't actually marry her. And it simply means that if his wife were to die, there is another wife sort of ready and waiting that he would marry. You're not allowed to marry on Shabbos or Yom Tov, and Yom Kippur as well, but that's only midrabanan, and that rabbinical prohibition will be waived in such a scenario. Concludes the Mishnah, on Mulai, they said to him, the Chachomim said to Rabbi Yehuda, Im kein ein ledava sof. If you're worried you've got to prepare and designate a second wife, then ein ledava sof. As the Bar Tanura says, Im kein zechayeshes lemisa, if you're worried you're choishish for misa, ein ledava sof, there's no end to the matter. Shema gamzu Thomas. Maybe the second spare wife will die, and therefore you should prepare a third one, a fourth one, a fifth one, who knows? So in Cain, ein ledava sof. We are worried, we separate him from his home. So says the Bar Tanura, ele letuma tashkicha chashinon. For tumah, for becoming impure, which is quite common, that we're choshesh for, and therefore we separate him from his home to the hallowed grounds of the Beis HaMikdash, where we're less worried about him becoming tomei. Lefichach maskinen lo kohen acher. But lemisa, says the Bar Tanura, lo shkicha, which thank God is not common, it was not as common as tumah, therefore sheyomas meis pepesa, we're not worried he's suddenly going to die, pitom lo chashinon, hilkachein maskinin lo ish acheres. Therefore we don't need to prepare a second wife for fear of the first wife suddenly dying. The halacha is like the chachomim. That is the end of the first Mishnah of Yomah.